From our studios in Rockefeller Center, here is Jane Pauley.
Returning to our story, a woman who has been teaching high school English for 21 years has been fired for allowing her students to use profanity in a class project. But now what started out as a debate over language is headed toward a far more troubling confrontation over race. Once again, here's Bob McEwen.
I don't think that it was just the profanity thing. I think certain people didn't like her, and they wanted her out of the school anyway.
Crystal Sims and Shantae Burse were both students in Cissy Lack's creative writing class and appeared in the controversial videotape.
They were grown-ups, and speaking to me like I shouldn't do this for the white woman, and that you just putting your own race down and you're Oreo this or Oreo that.
And they looked at a race issue as me being an African-American student and her being a Caucasian teacher, like, well, why are you taking up for this white teacher? I'm like, well, I'm not looking at her as a white person. I'm looking at her as a person.
At the time, the vast majority of students at Berkeley High were black. 2/3 of the teachers were white. And then there was the principal at Berkeley, Vernon Mitchell. He was the one who first seized the videotape plays and initiated Lack's suspension. Pressure on the students also seemed to be coming from him. Consider this tape, recorded by Principal Vernon Mitchell himself. During his own investigation of Cissy Lack's, Mitchell questioned the students who'd been involved, characterizing their behavior in these racially charged terms.
When I looked at that tape, I see black students acting a fool, okay? And I see white folks videotaping.
School Board President Cindy Reeds Ormsby.
Do you think that Mr. Mitchell was justified in saying that?
I think he was emotional, and I think he may have made a mistake in that, but it was done. I don't think it contributed to the outcome of the hearing, though.
If I told you that we've been told Mr. Mitchell contacted other students in that class and advised them not to speak at the hearing on Cissy Lack's behalf, what would you say?
I would say that if he did that, that would have been wrong and would have been a mistake.
Mr. Mitchell, the principal here, he called my mother and he told her he didn't want me to testify because he felt like this was a case closed, but she was fired. That was the end of it.
So Mr. Mitchell called your mother to discourage you from appearing at the hearing?
Yeah, because I guess they felt like she wasn't meant to teach her because of that.
But isn't that what the hearing was supposed to determine?
Right. That's the part I didn't understand.
Principal Vernon Mitchell would not comment on whether he called parents to intimidate students and declined Dateline's request for an interview. We also wanted to ask him about another videotape, one made 2 years before Cissy Lack's taped her class. It was a school play in the Berkeley High Auditorium. It too contained profanity, simulated violence, and suggestive behavior. But unlike the plays on Cissy Lack's tapes, Principal Mitchell supported this performance. The difference? For one thing, as school administrators point out, there is much less profanity here. Another difference, though, is that this play, applauded by the principal, was produced under the direction of a black teacher.
Thank you very much.
So was the firing of Cissy Lack's really motivated by school board policy alone? Did Lack's have a history of problems?
Was there ever any complaint on Ms. Lack's record in the 22 years she had taught in the same school district?
I'm not aware of any.
Not a single complaint on her record?
Not that I know of.
Not about policy, not about curriculum, not about methodology?
Like I said before, I'm aware of none.
Dr. Catherine Nelson says that race may be the real issue.
The black families out there heard that the kids used profanity on these tapes, and they were, here I am, a respectable person living in a respectable neighborhood, and they are trying to make my children look bad.
Fairness under the First Amendment, which is...
It's been about a year since Cissy Lack's was fired for allowing students to use inappropriate language in school, which is precisely why we were a little surprised at what we found when we visited Principal Vernon Mitchell's office this past November.
We were in Vernon Mitchell's office 2 days ago, and there was a round table with a display of what I presume was recommended black literature. Now, you can look through these books and find all the words that were in those videotapes the F word, the S word, the MF word. They're all here.
In the context and in the amount that it was in those videos?
Let me just, you know, explicit sexual content has been one of the complaints we have heard about the videotapes. Let me read to you some of this. I took my hands and dipped them into the wine bucket and grabbed some ice, which I placed in my mouth, and then started to suck Sella's throbbing breasts. Sella was licking her lips and quietly moaning. And it goes on for page after page in explicit detail: oral sex, copulation, gay sex. This is probably a fine work of literature, but it's being recommended as reading in that school where Cissy Lax was fired for allowing her kids to say the same words that they wrote as part of their class exercise. How do you explain that to people?
I cannot explain it. I can't.
Your board did the firing. Yes. It's your school recommending this reading.
And yeah, I'll certainly look into that. This is the first I've ever heard of it.
And she did. In this letter to Dateline, Ormsby revealed the books were displayed by Principal Mitchell and later sold to students at the request of the parent-teacher-student organization. We were told that when the principal was made aware of the language in the books, he removed them, but no disciplinary action was ever taken against those responsible. Cissy Lax says this is further evidence she's been unfairly singled out and worries that her treatment is intimidating other teachers.
Teachers are afraid to teach, students are afraid to learn, everybody's afraid to express themselves because somebody's going to come in and say, you don't know it, you didn't know it, but now you know it, you broke a rule, you're fired. Well, that is ineffective schooling, it's ineffective education, it's a disaster for public education.
I am personally unaware and have not heard of any teacher who has changed anything in the way they teach since this case.
But when we tried to talk to other teachers about this, here at Berkeley High and at other schools in the district, they all refused, saying they feel like they're walking on eggshells and using such terms as racial tensions, even a climate of fear.
This was one decision that the school board made, and we do not have a history of throwing books out of libraries or burning books or censoring what a teacher does in a classroom.
We had a book to read, and it was Huckleberry Finn, and one of our teachers wouldn't let us read it because she felt that it has the N-word in there and she didn't want to get fired because of it. And I thought about it and I said, this is affecting a lot of people.
I would kick your completely. Do you know that?
Even a year later, there is still disagreement. Not only about the effect Lax firing has had on education, but about what really motivated students to use profanity in their plays.
So why do you think they chose to express themselves that way over those subjects?
Because personally, I think they were probably just pulling the wool over her eyes. They were getting away with murder and they knew it, but she didn't.
Were you scammed by these kids in a way?
No, I wasn't scammed. I've always respected my students and I have not been disappointed.
After a teaching career that spanned 2 decades, Cissy Lax is now working part-time for an organization encouraging energy conservation. But she hasn't given up. Lax is suing the school system, fighting for academic freedom and to get her job back. She is supported by the National Education Association and backed by some surprising allies.
I was incited. I mean, it's like, how dare you? Who gave you the right to use these types of words?
Remember Pat Singletary, one of the parents who objected to Lax teaching methods? Well, shortly after her daughter Shelley started writing with Cissy Lax, there was a dramatic improvement in her schoolwork and her attitude at home.
She kept saying how Miss Lax this, Miss Lax that. Everything out of her mouth was Miss Lax. So it's like, yeah, I got to meet this lady.
So Pat did something few of the other parents ever had. She called Cissy Lax.
Then Miss Lax explained her teaching technique to me, of letting the kids do what they felt, not inhibiting them, and the importance of creative writing.
So when you're talking about that dramatic transformation, you believe Cissy Lax was responsible for it?
Yes. She actually educated me a lot, too. Like I said, being a disciplinarian, you tend to be very rigid, and you don't see anything but what you say. This change in Shelley made me do a change, too, because I had to see something wrong in me
that I couldn't reach Shelley and someone else could. That bothered me quite a bit.
But not all LAC's former students have fared so well. Today, Reginald McNeary goes to a different high school. He was recently suspended, though, and has had some brushes with the law. Reggie spends more time on pinball than poetry these days, but says Cissy LACs gave him something no one else ever had.
Freedom. Liberty to express yourself. You have the opportunity to write about any topic, whatever you choose to. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. And what was it about the freedom and liberty to express yourself that got you out of the corner and into the group?
I liked it because I had never been offered that freedom to, you know, show my feelings in any class. And it kind of woke me up. Exactly, it woke me up.
Cissy LACs wants her job back and damages. Her suit, which will be heard by a federal court in Missouri in November, alleges she was discriminated against by the school board and that her right to free speech was violated. What do you think? Give us some feedback. If you're over 18, you can call us at 900-678-4622, which will cost you 95 cents a minute. You can also send us a fax at 212-664-3330 or reach us by email. Our address is dateline@nbc.com. We'll have the results soon on Dateline.